What are the top SEO trends in 2024? In today's edition of Crawling Mondays, we are going to discuss about it with some of the top SEO experts in the world. And we are not going to only share what we think are the top SEO trends, but if we think that, well, they are actually something good for SEO, for the users, in general, for the search industry and the web ecosystem overall, and what we can do about them. To start with today's conversation, I would like to introduce you those SEOs who I have invited. Cindy Krum, the founder of Mobile Moxie and SEO consultant. Hello, Cindy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you very much for coming. Lily Ray, she's the senior SEO director at ANSIF. Hello, Lily.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for making the time for it. And Kevin Indig, growth advisor and creator of Growth Memo. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be part of this group.
Thank you for joining today. And I know that the tricky question here is only to come up with a single trend, right? But as much as possible, I want to start the conversation by asking each, what would you say will be the major trend that will end up shifting SEO in 2024?
So my overall, there are a lot of details in here, but overall, I think it's going to be a rough year. I know a lot of SEOs are hoping for a break, especially people who write up all the changes like Lily. But
Don't say that.
I think we're in for a lot of Google changes, testing, oversteering, correction. There's a lot of pressure on Google and they're trying to rise to the occasion. But that's going to be, a lot of testing. And the long and short of it is like, how do you emotionally deal with that? Like, I think clients are going to stress out. I think SEOs are going to stress out, but SEOs should take more of a wait and see approach and not stress out. That's kind of where I think things are and like how to survive. Because I think 2023 has been a rough year.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that, but I'm sad to hear that we won't get a break because I need a break. So yeah, I think I absolutely agree with Cindy and a lot of the larger points that she's making. I had a few ideas for this, but I would say one that's maybe a little more hopeful for SEOs. Not sure what we're seeing already and what's been happening. I would say a lot more in the last couple of weeks and months is that Google seems to be integrating like personalization more and things like Google Discover more and like integrating Discover into search and search into Discover a bit more. And they're starting to say this too. Like, I think that we're going to see more examples of like, oh, do you want to follow this brand? Do you want to follow this topic? Are you interested in this? Are you not interested in this? Because that's a way that Google can potentially go up against, OpenAI. If they say, we actually have a lot of data about the user and what they like and what their journey is. And I know Cindy talks a lot about journeys. So if we can kind of like map out what they're looking for and what they're interested in better than other companies.
That's an interesting point. And by the way, I do agree with you, Cindy and Lily. What's interesting is that Google is actually on track to launch as many official updates this year as last year and in 2021. So in each of those years, they have launched 10 updates. We're at 9 in this year. It's debatable whether the Hidden Gems update should be counted as that or not. I'm basically going by their official dashboard for rank updates. However, it does feel like the SERPs are changing more than ever. And what's counterintuitive about that is that, we often talk about, and especially Googlers often talk about how Google is getting much, much better, but somehow it doesn't really feel like that, right? And so there's this weird tension between more updates and more changes, but somehow it all feels like it's stagnating or not moving forward. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that.
I think that the challenge here is the realization that if Google has been doing all of these releases this year, have been all reactive releases because they can definitely see what you're mentioning here, Kevin, and what we can all agree that is happening. On one hand, Google has been losing search or discovery market share versus TikTok and a lot of social platforms that allow to find content that can be more reliable because they have been published by humans, let's say. So what you mentioned, Lily, 100%, I expect that there's more of a shift happening in 2024, give more community and socialization features in the SERPs, like we saw with Perspective, the ability to follow topics, indeed, that is part of that socialization because they need to come up with a human first approach that feels more secure to rely on because of all of the AI generated spam that we're seeing more and more. that they are saying that they're okay about, but realistically, they're trying to add more filters to give human content more prominence and more visibility. That on one hand. And then on the other hand, all the other shifts that we're seeing or releases or at these announcements have to do with OpenAI and ChatGPT and LLMs that they also sort of like fell behind, even if we are seeing that they have been able to, let's say, try to compete and release integrations that seems that yes, they did have the technology already and they were sort of ready to launch that, but they didn't because they didn't wanted to kill their own cow. Of course, they had the search paradigm as it was. They were making tons of money showing ads, and of course they didn't want to just to show the answer in a chatbot that wouldn't allow them to show all the adverts that they do, right? And because of that too, they have that sort of restriction. And this is why, and here's my hot take, I don't believe that the integration of the HGE will end up killing traffic to third parties, as a lot of SEOs are concerned that will happen, because at the end of the day, that is part of Google business model. They need to be very, very careful. We are seeing that the SGE test, the snapshots are not even shown for the foodie blogging type of topics. They will eventually release those, but very, very carefully. And my other hot take, and my final one, I promise here, is that they will end up releasing more of those, of that SGE type of layer of integration to transactional commercial online shopping queries that will allow them to become more of a real competitor versus Amazon, and recreating the PLPs directly in the SGE snapshot, as we're seeing that they're already testing to do, and being able to forward and refer traffic directly to the PDPs, etc. But by all means, I don't believe that this is a major threat to companies, to businesses that have a real product or a real service. There will be a shift to which page gets the traffic, but if you provide a real product or service, you will get the traffic anyway. The problem happens with the middleman, with the affiliates, because for this type of queries, Google will not refer the traffic to them anymore, I'm afraid.
I want to jump in on something that Kevin said that kind of you've elaborated on, but is an important distinction. And that is that I think that we need to be looking at what Google's doing in the search result that they're not calling an algorithm update. So they've started mixing their language up, and they have system updates and algorithm updates. And then we have things that don't have any description or announcement at all, like all of the new inclusions that are happening in search results. Those don't need an update because they're not part of the main algorithm. They're something else. And those are taking clicks away. Those are taking visibility away. But if Google doesn't make an announcement, people aren't freaking out, but we should be. And it's kind of like burying the clue in plain sight. If you're looking at search results, they are changing, and it doesn't need an announcement for that to happen. And the big bulk of SEOs aren't looking at these things and aren't freaking out in the way that they should.
I mean, there has been a pretty strong traffic erosion going on with all of the user features changes. I understand the uncertainty that this causes, especially towards the future and what we can rely on and what not, right? I have a very interesting take that I would like to highlight here from the survey. A bunch of SEOs send their thoughts. Petra Keys Hertet, she mentions the battle of authority versus AI. People will continue to see great short-term results with spammy stuff, so there will be some bigger change needed in Google. And I know that there's a big trend already going on. Lily, you have talked a lot about it. Which will you say are the best strategy to move forward, to be prepared? Because now that content is pretty much commoditized with AI, these extra layers and efforts that we need to make to highlight real human authorship, let's say, but also that needs to be cost effective. So there's a hassle there.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting developments this year that took me a little bit by surprise, it might have even been at the end of the year last year, but early this year, Google started to very clearly communicate how it treats AI content. And I think most SEOs read that communication and said, AI content's fine, right? I read it and read something different. If you read, especially the questions at the bottom, where I think it was Danny Sullivan that wrote it, it was like, does Google want websites to list authors for AI content? And they're like, well, that doesn't make sense because it's AI, but we want you to say that it was written with AI or partially with AI, right? No one's doing that. Not a lot of people are doing that. Some people are, but most people aren't, right? A lot of people read that and said, Google's fine with AI. Now I'm going to go full force creating all this AI content, right? And obviously we're seeing a lot of that this year. And this is not to say that it's always bad. And this is not to say that there's plenty of great use cases, especially if you actually do this like thoughtfully. But I think that, as expected, SEOs have blown that out of proportion. And now we're starting to see Google crack down without necessarily saying that they're doing that. And we're starting to see situations where things are spiraling out of control. Let's say like parasite SEO and these different topics where people are really blasting AI. And Google can't say the AI content is the problem. They probably never will, because obviously they have their own reasons for promoting AI tools and content and things like this. But we're seeing that it goes up and then it goes down, right? And it's like a lot of these different updates, things will just go up. People will take it as a clue that AI content and all these tactics work, and then it goes down. And they don't necessarily tell you when they lost 90% of the visibility overnight, right? So I think we'll see a lot more of that next year, but I'm not confident that Google will tell us ever that AI content is intrinsically the problem.
That's a good point. I totally agree that there's this like quote unquote window of opportunity that people are trying to leverage where, not everybody is using AI, so you can kind of get a head start. But long term, like obviously there's a quality aspect here. How well do you build it? You can create AI content in 5 seconds or in 50 hours. Like actually putting a long prompt together, spending a lot of time, putting different data sources together, making it really good. And that might be much harder for Google to detect. And maybe it's also fine, right? Like maybe Google's like, okay, this might be AI, but it's good value, right? Users like it, and we will keep it ranking. But long term, I don't see Google being able to completely prevent AI in search results. I think this is something that they might be able to slow down, but long term, I think that certain keywords are just not worth going after at all. And they might already not be today, right? But these like very basic generic types of searches, like how to create an Excel spreadsheet, right? Like that, first of all, right? Like there's probably no business value except for Microsoft, who should be ranking for that. And on the other hand, that's something that if SGE launches, I expect that to be answered right in the search results. And it might already have a featured snippet, right? So it might already be not worth going after today, but these are the things that in the future, people will not even search for anymore. They might be using AI co-pilots that will tell them, that will guide them, that will do it for themselves, right? So I agree with your take, Lee, and I think another dimension of that is that we'll see this growing layer of queries that are so shallow and so basic that even in search, I'm not sure that's going to be interesting to go after anymore, and also for Google.
I believe that for the type of queries that we already see to have zero value, because these are factual queries for which Google will provide the answer right there in the SERPs with a position 0 or feature snippets or like whatever's are featured directly there, and there's zero value for that. The same we happen with a lot of broader ambiguous type of queries. I believe that there has been like a big gap going on, and a lot of people like trying whatever to see what sticks because it has been so cheap. And a lot of players do that right now with AI too. And that is the main problem, by the way, that I have seen with so many examples of AI generated content by shockingly important players in the market that has been generated in a way that has been very careless. Right? What are the quality system, the validation, the human editorial quality process, the training data, etc., right?
I think that AI content has a lot of the same problems as the broad, low quality content that people have been hiring low quality writers to create. Is like, it might not be accurate. It's certainly not unique or creative. And we talked about this at Brighton, where I gave the example, like to contextualize this, like think about how many dentists there are in the world. Does every single one need to write a blog post about why it's important to floss? No. Like that's, and there's so many blog posts about why it's important to floss. How is Google going to decide which is the best one? And do they need to use that compute power to do it? Or should they just kind of like get the broad facts and show an AI result and not worry about ranking the best why is it important to floss article? To succeed, you'll have to not just write the same article that you could offshore or pay a low quality content creator to do or put into AI. If AI can do it or can offshore it, then it's possibly not worth doing unless you're going to add something better, like a song to sing while you're brushing your teeth or someone doing a funny dance or something like that. And I think I also posit this new theory. I did a talk called Word to Your Mom that I think has some interesting concepts here that are worth exploring. In that talk, I talk about maybe we need to read between the lines in what Google is saying to SEOs about EEAT, that it's about quality and authoritativeness and all of these things. What if it's about detecting humanity, detecting that this is really a human writing it and that they have a footprint on the web outside of just this, you know, potentially fake AI generated content that's a fake name? If they have a footprint, AI does not have a web footprint with social media and this and that all over the web. If EEAT is about proving humanity and it's a gatekeeper to allowing things to get into the SGE, because if you allow AI generated content into another AI system, then the snake eats its tail and you create filter bubbles. And that's a big concern for Google.
I totally agree. This is my main take for next year, actually, Cindy, what you're describing. But yeah, I very much agree. You can tell the difference between an expert writing content and an amateur very quickly by the terminology they use, the topics they focus on. And I do agree with you that I'm convinced, and I've noticed that Google is able to understand that difference very clearly, right? And I think that's what they're going after with EAT. Now, you mentioned this like component of humans and human content and search. And I take overall is that Google is humanizing search, right? So on the one hand, they have this wave of commodity AI content that they're not able to stop long term, where everybody has the same tools and can, go after the same topics. And these are kind of, not worth for Google to fight about. And then on the other hand, you have all the stuff that the hidden gems content has basically focused on, right? It's communities, it's forums. They published forum schema. They have the perspectives tab. They have social stats now in the search results. And then I even think that the helpful content update plays into that same idea, right? Hardcore line between human content and AI content. And AI content, Google will probably go after themselves, but human content is something that they cannot replicate, right? And since the Hidden Gems update in May, we've seen a lot of forums and communities actually gaining a lot of visibility. It's not just Reddit and Quora, it's actually a lot of smaller communities and forums like Shopify's, Asana's community, what to expect, right? Like really engage communities. And so that's a source of Google for content that they have a higher conviction is coming from humans, even though theoretically a forum member could use AI to post their answer. However, the smart play about this is that these forums are often moderated. And if you as a member stick out with shallow AI content, you're not going to get upvoted in your answer. You might get banned or kicked, who knows, right? But there is a moderation mechanism in forums, and there is a verification mechanism in forums. And I think that's another play that you see all these big platforms leveraging against AI content and bots is they verify the users. I recently got verified on LinkedIn. You use Clear for that. Clear is the same company that allows you to get faster through security checks at airports. And you have to submit a photo with your ID or with a passport, which is the ultimate proof of being human, at least so far. So, these are all mechanisms that Google can leverage that forums and communities provide in a way to separate human from AI content.
Kevin, I just want to throw in, video does that too. And I think that's part of why we're seeing more video and influencer, but I don't want to hog.
Yeah, no, you're right.
No, I mean, everything you just said is so amazing. And it's really interesting for me to hear all this stuff. Number one, Kevin, everything you just said, like, I completely agree that that's the direction that Google's absolutely going in. In some cases, like, it feels like they're going a little too fast, a little sloppy. Like some of the stuff with forums, it's like, okay, slow down. Like, that's
Ranking
not great content.
From Reddit or LinkedIn that people are leveraging
groups.google.com from 2005, people's personal information, not great. Anyway, but like it actually is really interesting to me because as you guys all know, I'm obsessed with EAT, now EEAT, been obsessed for a while. And late Bill Slawski, rest in peace, we did this article together about different patents that Google might use. This was like 2018. Different patents that Google might use to identify authors and their level of expertise and their knowledge within certain domains and identify them by their voice and identify them by their writing style. This was like 2015 that they launched these patents. So there's been a while that Google's been trying to understand who authors are. And a lot of people to this day, because Google says, oh, we don't use authors as a ranking factor. they're not reading between the lines. Like this has been a trend that's been happening for a long time starting. I mean, Cindy can probably tell us, when did this start? Authorship? I don't know, 15 years ago, it's been a very, very long time. So you have to read between the lines, but I think it's very clear that the best way of combating AI content is what we're talking about. It's like evidence that a real human has this real opinion about something.
Lily, I thought of you when I heard about the big build out of the personal knowledge graph that Jason Bernard talked about, because I was like, I was thinking, how does that fit into this larger picture of everything else that's going on? And the best insight I could come up with was, I bet it's hard for Google to draw a line between what they know about a person that is public knowledge and what they know about a person that is private knowledge. So like Taylor Swift probably has a Gmail account somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
And they need to be able to draw that line of like, this is publicly accessible and this we need to like, will get sued and should not be publishing in knowledge graph or cards or whatever.
I want to continue the conversation highlighting a little bit of more impact of the SGE, because a lot of worries and concerns in SEO has been about how SGE can still end up stealing your traffic in different ways. Lily, you highlighted something that, seeing it from an ethical standpoint, I 100% agree with what you mentioned, that will tend to happen if Google end up releasing the SGE as they are testing it right now. So there are certain queries that are branded. I believe that one of the examples that I got was for Walmart Black Friday offers, something like that, or Walmart Black Friday deals. And then they will recreate within the SGE a PLP type of experience, highlighting products that were on deal for Black Friday, and they could be found on Walmart or whatever brand that I search, but they were also highlighting them from other retailers, right?
Yeah.
So you could very easily click and go and take a look at other retailers. And this is traffic that before the SGE, if you see which is the page that is ranking in the top position, is of course the Black Friday landing page for Walmart, and then a few category pages with deals from Walmart. So this is traffic that they used to own, or the brand has been able to own until now. But if Google end up releasing how they are testing the SGE right now, this won't be the case anymore.
I have very strong opinions about this. I think that earlier in the year, we saw Google testing a lot of different formats for SGE when things were branded or not. And I actually have Danny saying from Google at one point, basically suggesting like for navigational queries, maybe it's not the best experience to have SGE. For one, take over the screen with an informational result about the brand. But now what we're seeing, Aleyda, what you're referring to is like, you'll type a brand, very much a navigational query. Walmart Black Friday deals, that's navigational. Like you typed Walmart number one. And for Google to show a bunch of results that aren't Walmart, I think, listen, I get that there's like a conspiracy. Maybe this is a paid search thing so people can bid on the key, like it forces Walmart to bid on that query or whatever. Maybe that's one thing that's happening. I don't know about that. Organic results for 25 years, Google knows people are looking for Walmart, right? So if they start putting other brands in SGE, users will show them that that's not a good experience. That's just my opinion. I think that this might be a bit of a glitch or something that they're testing or something that they will find is not a good result. But that's why we have to keep providing feedback when personally, I think it's terrible results. And I don't know how another brand would use an SEO strategy to try to capitalize on that. Like, what do? You write Walmart in your title? You can't do that,
Yeah, it feels a lot like there's still much to be desired by SGE. I'm so torn about this. I could, until I could still see Google after December 31st saying, you know what, this didn't work out, we're not going to launch it, or they launched it in full force and there's some massive update to the experience. I think we can all agree that the way that it looks right now and works right now, it's probably not helpful. It's not great. It has made a bit of an improvement, but reading a bit between the lines, I think that Google and a lot of users, or maybe SEOs, were hoping that the Gemini update made SG a lot better. And I've seen a little bit of an improvement, but it's not yet this step change where like, oh, wow, this actually offers a lot of helpful information, especially for local queries, brand queries, right? There's this whole type of queries where SGE offers nothing on top. And then you find these weird additions like, oh, it can now draw you an image. And you're like, but why would I use Google for that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So right now, it looks a lot like a kitchen sink where they try a whole bunch of stuff and then they hide behind it being an experiment. And I don't mean that so critical as it sounds. It's an experiment, right? So they try a bunch of stuff. They see what sticks. I don't buy that the engagement so far has been overwhelmingly positive. I don't want to say Sundar Pichai lies. I don't have any evidence for that, but I think Google makes it sound a bit better than it actually is, because they see that, yeah, exactly, because they know that a lot of people are using ChatGPT, and I see it in my own behavior. I use it all the time, and there's so many use cases where I don't go to Google anymore, but I ask ChatGPT or another LLM. So long story short, I don't think the future of SGE is clear. I do expect that when it launches, it will have an impact on queries that show featured snippets right now or direct answers. That's where I see the biggest losses. But for all these other query classes like local, like brand, like e-commerce, it might just hide between a little generate result button, but Google will either not show it at all or try to show it so passively that most users don't engage and react with it.
By the way, something to highlight here that I realized that we hadn't mentioned, there's a way out of the SGE, unlike BART and other LLMs and chatbots that have now disclosed the bots that they use so you can block them, etc. But with the SGE in particular, Google has highlighted how, because it's part of the traditional search experience that they have, there is no way out. Supposedly, the test will finish at the end of the year. I don't see it being nowhere near to be well tested and validated and useful across the many scenarios for which it has been shown in tests. Be released in January, 100%. To start wrapping up, I want to ask you for a last take, something that you haven't mentioned yet that you believe that will be meaningful for people watching us to take into account in 2024, given all of what we have been discussing so far.
I think my 2024 tip is to start questioning the SEO tools that you're using a little bit more, especially anything that's reporting on rankings, because the rankings are changing so much that it's hard for the tools to keep up and outline exactly what is in every single search result and get it right and tell you, not just what position you're in, but does that matter? And is it a good keyword to target? And like, yes, you're in organic position 1, but how much stuff is above you and how interactive is it? And how far are you being pushed down? Visibility scores, even, I think, are subject to getting things wrong. And it's becoming more and more important to really be testing results. I'm also seeing differences in results, like more stark differences between mobile and desktop. So be sure you're testing both. Just because you're sitting and working at your desktop or your laptop and you see a result doesn't mean that it's the same on your phone. I've seen instances where a knowledge graph appears on desktop but not mobile more than once. And by the way, all of these things that show up in the search result that are not an organic result, they follow different algorithms. There are different reasons the knowledge graph would show up here and not there. Google's not doing any announcements about those.
So I love that you highlighted something that is fundamental and it has been happening for a while. Kevin, you have written about a lot traffic erosion for many queries because of their feature snippets, whatever, and how rankings for a lot of circumstances doesn't make any sense to just track anymore. So visibility share, pixel position from the top to assess the click-through rate that you tend to get with those same type of queries, with the same type of intent or the same type of features, to assess if it's actually meaningful for you to go for it, not just because it has a huge search volume. It means that you will get all those clicks because there might be a big map pack at the top. If it is a localized query that will already fulfill the user search need, or there might be a video carousel and for a how-to type of query, and people will prefer to watch it most of the times to fulfill their need rather than just article, right?
Just gave a nice segue to my tip, which is not entirely new or surprising, but I think it's becoming increasingly important, which is what we're doing today, which is to record videos and put videos on YouTube. I've started to do it somewhat reluctantly. Instead of going and writing the article, it's like, I'm just going to talk about it for 20 minutes on video. Turns out, unsurprisingly, it gets a lot of views really fast. It gets a lot of engagement really fast. It shows up in Google Discover almost automatically in some cases, because guess what? It's on YouTube. YouTube's probably the biggest player in Google Discover. Google will sometimes rank YouTube 6 different times in the organic results. Google's using YouTube everywhere. And not to mention YouTube itself is one of the biggest search engines. So try to make that part of your strategy, even if it means like you have a client who is a plumber. can you go talk to the plumber on video for 20 minutes? And can you make that into 5 different YouTube videos? You know, because like that's probably going to be more impactful than having a dentist write about how to floss your teeth.
That's an amazing tip. I love it. And in fact, if you want to do that and assess how much of the visibility already Google tends to give video content for any query, you can go and take a look at tools like SEMrush or Systrix or Ahrefs or SEO ranking, your favorite tool. Go and take a look at YouTube rankings for these queries, and especially which are highlighted in Google with the video carousel. It will give you a tip about the type of traffic that, yes, YouTube is already at the moment getting for this, and the opportunity there, make a case created.
Building on that, I think for non-commercial queries, you really want to find a way to highlight the humanness in your content. So when you create the content yourself, right, you really want to elevate the expertise, that it's being written by a human, and focus on creating content with experts instead of amateurs that summarize the top 10 search results. The other thing is you want to ask yourself what unique value you can bring to the table for a query. And that's not necessarily new, but it's something that Google just goes after so much more. If you provide the same subtopics and cover the same things as everybody else, there's just no additional value for you. So you want to figure out what that is that you can provide. And then for commercial queries, in my opinion, this transformation to an e-commerce marketplace of Google is almost complete. They almost have a direct checkout. They have search filters, right? Like there's not much more missing for Google to be another Amazon, which is where they have to go. So that is a completely different game, in my opinion. And really want to focus on things like Merchant Center, organic product listings, thumbnails, price competition, discounts.
Structured data.
Structured data, right? It's like a full kind of, if you know Amazon SEO, right? Like that's almost transferable to Google shopping optimization, in my opinion. Maybe there's a bit more, but I really see that divide between these different types of queries, right? There's shopping, there's local, there's kind of information or non-commercial searches, and each of those warrant very different strategies.
My last tip will be, if you haven't played still the SGE, go and take a look and see how the results are being shown for your main queries across the different projects and clients that you have, to identify opportunities, to identify if there's stuff to really be scared about. There's a lot of this feeling of being scared all the time now for the releases. And so go and take a look and validate and assess what can be the worst scenario if it is released even as it is at the moment, and what you can do about it, what all the type of content, topics, angles, type of formats you can create to regain that type of visibility and traffic in other ways too. So thank you very much, everybody. It was amazing to have all of your inputs, your ideas, your tips, and I hope that with all of this, the SEOs watching it will have a bigger case to get more resources, to move forward with some recommendations that they have already given to their clients, to their bosses. And if you have anything that you would like to share with us, feel free to leave a comment, to tag us, to ask for any questions in case you have. Really appreciate you watching. Remember to like the video if you like it, subscribe to the channel to avoid missing any future episodes of Crawling Mondays. And thank you very much to Content King, who has been our today's sponsor. Bye-bye.